A popular program sending mental health help instead of armed police faces new questions about its future from some of its biggest supporters.
It really tears up a lot of the trust that we have with the city and county of Denver.
A debunked hoax resurfaces in the race for governor, suggesting that transgender rights leads to kids across Colorado identifying as animals. Looking at whether low pay for elected officials means we only get certain types of leaders. And it's been generations since this fish was declared gone in Colorado. Then splish splash, happy discovery. Next. Denver's program sending mental health professionals out in place of police on certain calls is really popular. It's even being imitated in other cities. Now, some community groups that helped start the STAR program say they're being shut out of its future. The city says it's temporarily shutting down STAR's Community Advisory Committee. Mark Salinger has the story.
The city calls it a temporary pause. Some members of the STAR Community Advisory Committee worry it's more than that.
We are fighting against this program being something it's not.
Vinny Cervantes.
The advisory committee is meant to be the voice of the people.
Miguel Ceballos.
We as experts have to have a seat at the table for STAR to be STAR.
And Alexander Landau all have a seat on the committee, or had a seat, before the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment sent an email to the members on Monday canceling all future meetings for upcoming months. The department promised an enhanced community engagement model next year. Members of the committee see it as a way to silence them for raising concerns about the program's future.
What is lost is a voice of the community.
This is the only mechanism of community and public oversight and input into this program.
The committee has been vocal against STAR responding to calls with any police officers or members of the city's new street enforcement team, which has the power to ticket people. STAR denies that's ever happened.
STAR have never requested police backup due to a safety issue in any neighborhood across the entire city.
Carly Salon is the operations manager for STAR. She says 30% of calls STAR has responded to were initially dispatched to DPD. The reason STAR and police officers are sometimes on scene together.
So if an officer shows up on scene first, recognizes that STAR is the most appropriate response and there really isn't a need for a law enforcement presence, they will request STAR over the radio.
As the program expands, the community groups that helped start it want to make sure they have a seat at the table.
That's what's at stake. The dissolvement entirely of STAR as we know it and the rebirth of a much larger co-responder program.
Community Advisory Committee says it'll continue holding its regular scheduled meetings, though it's not clear just how effective those will be without the DDPHE employees involved in those meetings. The committee has the power to make recommendations, but no actual power to instill change. The health department says it hopes to have an outline for a new method to get community input by sometime early next year. And Kyle, they say they hope for it to be more equitable and effective, but didn't provide details on what that'll be.
So it seems like, Mark, that these founders are not necessarily concerned about how the program is operating right now. They're just worried about what might happen in the future.
Yeah, like many people, they support the STAR program. They want to see it grow. They think it's doing a lot of things right. They think it could do some things better, but they just want to have a seat at the table as it expands, as it is doing right now.
We'd love to see everybody feel good about it, because in a tough situation these days, it seems like that's one of the few things that people agree on that's working.
Very true.
Mark Salinger, thank you. Tiny town of Springfield in southeast Colorado has a new police chief. You know, after the whole force up and quit months ago, the new guy is a former Pueblo police officer who was under review there for repeatedly punching a carjacking suspect. Chief Clay Clipful is already on the job in Springfield. He used to work for the Huerfano County Sheriff's Office and Pueblo Police. The NBC station in Colorado Springs reports that when Clipful was in Pueblo, he was investigated for punching a suspect who was already pinned to the ground during an arrest in 2018. Police had said at the time they thought the suspect had a handgun, that he was reaching for it. We asked Pueblo Police whatever happened with Clipful following that review. Police directed us to the clerk's office for answers, and nothing from them yet. Pueblo Police, we should note, earned a state investigation for their somewhat punchy arrest techniques. The state found that the department's training was quote-unquote strike heavy, and even ordered a few officers to come off the streets until they could be retrained on how to arrest people with less punching. Republican candidate for governor Heidi Ganahl has made preventing youth suicide a centerpiece of her campaign. But now Ganahl is suggesting a debunked hoax that attacks transgender kids. We should mention have a suicide rate almost 6 times the rate for all teenagers. GOP gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahl recently brought up the debunked hoax about transgender kids when she was on conservative talk radio.
Not many people know that we have furries in Colorado schools. Have you heard about this, Jimmy? Yeah, kids identifying as cats. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's happening all over Colorado, and schools are tolerating it.
When asked for evidence, the Ganal campaign provided a photo of someone in an animal costume posted online by an unidentified source. The Washington Post and Associated Press report this has become a popular hoax among some conservatives who claim that transgender rights will lead people to identify as animals. The hoax really got rolling last March when a Republican state legislator in Nebraska repeated it and went viral.
They meow and they bark, and they interact with their school, with the teachers and that in this fashion. And now schools are wanting to put litter boxes in the schools for these children to use. How is this sanitary?
The Nebraska state legislator immediately retracted his claim and apologized. Ganal's embrace of the anti-trans hoax is noteworthy because she's made preventing youth suicide a top issue in her campaign. Trans teenagers have a suicide rate almost 6 times that of their peers. Ganal has even used the issue of teen suicide to dodge questions on other topics, including election conspiracy theories.
Is there anything that you still need to learn to know if you feel that there was fraud in the 2020 election?
Oh my goodness, Marshall. Let's talk about what's important to the people of Colorado, and that's kids. It's skyrocketing crime. I just said that kids are killing themselves at record rates, and we want to talk about other things that aren't that important to many people.
A recent study found 82% of transgender people have considered suicide, and the rate is highest among teens. Researchers theorize that transgender youth are not in any inherently higher risk of suicide. It's anti-trans messages and discrimination that drive those suicide rates. We understand that discussions about suicide can be difficult. If you or somebody that you know is considering self-harm, there are people available to talk at any time to offer support and options. You can call Colorado Crisis Services at 844-493-8255 or text the word TALK to 38255. You can also now dial 988 for the National Mental Health Hotline. Not unusual to see candidates running unopposed in rural elections. Up in Hayden and Routt County, they had no opposition candidates anywhere on the ballot, so the election's canceled. An outgoing council member will automatically become mayor, 2 incumbent council members keep their seat, and 1 new person, only one in town willing to run, is going to join them. The town manager says calling off the election rather than just rubber stamping unopposed candidates will save Hayden about $8,000. He said it's the first time he can recall they've done that. These aren't exactly lucrative positions. Hayden's town officials are expected to work 20 to 30 hours a week and make $100 to $150 a month. 20 to 30 hours a week, $100 to $150 a month, plus health benefits. That is public service indeed. City council members in Fort Collins make a lot more, but I still wouldn't say a lot, $10,000 a year for their service. In November, voters there will get to decide whether to bump up that pay to $37,000 a year. Mayor's pay in Fort Collins would go from about $16,000 to $56,000 a year. Fair Council Pay, which is the group behind this initiative, says better pay would allow a more diverse group of people to serve in city leadership.
The current pay really makes it difficult for many people to serve, and it often requires unique circumstances. Historically, city council members have been retired, they've been well off, they've been employed by an employer who allows for a very flexible work schedule. And they also potentially have had spousal support. So not everybody in our community has the luxury or the ability to serve.
So it would be more pay in Fort Collins plus access to health benefits. You can imagine that current city council members not opposed to this.
This interest in council compensation came from a motive of wanting to ensure that more people could participate in the process. I mean, we really would like to make it where it's feasible for people to do this.
Currently, the approximately $10,000 with no health care isn't really going to allow a very broad section of people to be able to run and to serve.
Y'all saw the bear skin, right? Couldn't tell if that was real or fake. It probably doesn't matter. What to pay elected officials has been a topic of conversation all over the place, from small towns clear up to Denver's school board, which decided last year that it will pay future board members up to $750 a month for their service. High country communities will decide whether to tax landlords more and try to make living there more affordable. You've asked us whether Coloradans win or lose when it comes to sports gambling. It's a tricky question, but we'll give it a go. And wildlife workers make a major discovery. 85 years since the last time they even tried looking for these little suckers anymore. There they are. That's next. You can always tell a possible tax increase on your ballot. By law, under Tabor, it's got to scream at you in all caps. Voters in 3 counties are going to see such a shouted question, proposing a new lodging tax. That's because Eagle, Summit, and Park counties are taking advantage of a new state law that will allow them to spend lodging tax revenue on something other than promoting tourism. Here's Steve Staker.
Short-term rentals have had a great impact on our county, and I'm not too sure it's been a good impact on our county.
It costs a whole heck of a lot more to live in Park County than it did before short-term rentals started popping up. So Republican County Commissioner Dick Elsner and his colleagues are asking voters to help, proposing a 2% lodging tax expected to raise about $750,000 each year to fund affordable housing and child care help to benefit the county's workforce.
One of the big things we're looking at is trying to figure out how to incentivize and create or whatever workforce housing.
Park County can do this thanks to a change in state law this year. The law used to require any money raised from a county lodging tax to be spent solely on promoting tourism, something Colorado's beautiful mountain communities didn't really need. What they do need is housing.
Because of short-term rentals, we have lost a lot of the inventory of what were rental units that people could live in and work.
The new law allows counties to charge a 2% tax and to spend 90% of the lodging money brought in to help the local workforce or enhance the visitor experience. They still have to spend 10% of what they take in on advertising and promotion. Both Summit County and Eagle County are considering 2% taxes too, both expecting to bring in millions.
A 2% tax isn't going to be the deciding factor for anybody that wants to rent a place in Park County as a short-term rental to go vacation.
You have to specify how you're going to spend this money, so all the counties are going to voters asking to use this tax specifically on housing projects and child care for their tourism workforces in the county. The law also allows you to use this money, if you want to enhance the visitor experience. So maybe you're putting in new trailheads or you're repairing trails in places where people use a lot, just to try to make the experience for anyone who's coming to town better. But right now, a lot of these communities are just saying what we need so desperately now is housing.
Yeah, and so now people are going to have a chance to put their money and other people's money where the collective community's mouth is. I mean, they've said that's the need. Now we'll see if they're willing to take the hit on the lodging tax.
Absolutely.
All right, Steve, thank you.
Another day in the 80s for us, but those afternoon clouds quickly started pushing in, and we have been monitoring a few scattered showers up into the high country through the foothills. Parts of the metro area kind of getting in on the action. Here in Denver, we haven't seen much, but you'll certainly notice that cloud deck kind of building in across the I-25 corridor and then shifting off to the eastern plains. Not a ton of precipitation out there, just a few isolated showers kind of popping up. And then as we zoom out and kind of focus our attention out toward the Gulf, and of course, Hurricane Ian still charging northward. Those outer bands now impacting Fort Myers, and we are anticipating it making landfall as we look ahead toward tomorrow afternoon into the evening. Storm system is an absolute monster. Around here, it's pretty quiet into tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine by the afternoon. A couple of clouds out there. Scattered showers primarily staying up in the mountains for us. It should be a dry day here across the urban corridor and off to the eastern plains. Temperatures once again making their way back into the lower 80s for us tomorrow afternoon. Some spots in the 60s and 70s up in the high country. You'll notice that next storm system, though, it's on the horizon. It digs in for us Friday and into Saturday, and that'll usher in a good chance for some storms Friday afternoon and evening, some scattered rain, and a much cooler looking weekend. Finally, feeling a little more like fall.
Colorado's making millions off legal sports betting. Still unclear, though, how Coloradans are faring on their bets. And finding a long-lost fish, it was still in Colorado after all, gives wildlife workers hope for some other species. That's next. Tonight's next question comes to us from Stephen, who asks, of all the dollars legally bet in Colorado, what percentage gets returned as winnings? Stephen, we don't know. And here's why. The state's Department of Revenue does not report win and loss figures. Those numbers are inside the tax filings for sportsbook operators. By law, the state can't release individual tax returns. Here's what we do know on the better side. The state says people have bet more than $7.8 billion on sports since Colorado legalized sports betting in May of 2020. Sports betting report for last fiscal year says people bet $4.8 million over those 12 months. And of that 4.5 billion was returned in payments to players, so winnings, voids, cancellations, and resettlements. If you're wondering about something, anything in our great state, we bet that somebody else is wondering about it too. So keep emailing your next questions to next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext on Twitter. Colorado Parks and Wildlife's newest discovery proves that being declared extinct does not necessarily mean something's gone for good. Back in 1937, the greenback cutthroat trout was considered extinct. The population was so small at that point. Then in 2012, CPW found a few of the fish outside Colorado Springs, and they've been working for the last decade to try and restore the fish population. Well, now they've discovered that the fish are naturally reproducing west of Denver in Herman Gulch. And just last week, they found a year-old fish. Why is that important? Well, it means that shows that there was reproduction in the past year and that those fish can make it through the winter.
Well, I mean, that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to get the fish to be able to live out its life cycle and perpetuate itself as a population in, a number of streams within its native range. And so up to this point, all of the greenbacks that we had out on the landscape were stocked fish. And so, that's okay, but if they're not reproducing, it's not going to persist.
The greenback cutthroat trout is currently listed as threatened, so that's a step down from endangered. In Colorado, you can catch them, but have to release them back into the water. Something to consider about pay for elected officials. Your feedback next. The most thing we saw today is trash talk involving two lousy football teams.
The flags are in the wrong order, so before we go in, we'll just rearrange the furniture.
That is Fort Collins Mayor Jenny Arndt at the U.S. Capitol, showing a little Colorado state pride and moving CSU's flag to the position of honor in place of CU's. Obviously, those universities are a lot more than their football teams, but it's fall. That's where the focus is, and the way both of them are playing, maybe we just leave the bragging to Air Force. Or dare I say it, Wyoming. Bruce writes in tonight to say, I served on Severance's town board for 14 years. Didn't even know there was pay until I was appointed. It was $50 per meeting, but it was never about the money. It was the opportunity to serve. That's a very good point, Bruce, and I appreciate you sharing the details of your severance pay with us. It was just wild to me that they expect officials up in Hayden to work 20 to 30 hours a week on town matters and get $100 to $150 a month. People are serving for the right reasons up there. We'll see you next time.